Guys, Nefer Kit is surprisingly already out, and today I will analyze it fully to explain it all and to tell you how strong this character is looking to be at the moment. It dropped quite early, I was expecting it tomorrow, but luckily we already have it. So, Nefer is, predictably, a Lunar Bloom main DPS. She's dropping just a patch after Llama, and the synergy between the two is quite obvious. They're actually pretty similar, because just like Llama, Nefer also has a base 200 elemental mastery for free, which is probably the clearest form of statistical power creep possible if we compare her to some Dendro DPSs of the past. Another similarity is that she's a Catalyst character as well, which makes sense because in 6.0 we get 2 free-to-play Catalysts, both of them being very good for the Bloom archetype since they give plenty of elemental mastery. This is now the third time in a row they've released a dedicated support to the patch before the DPS they're mainly supposed to boost, the first being the Escoffier Skirk duo and the second being the Nefa Flames duo, and I'm gonna be honest, this is starting to become a quite expensive pattern for players if you want to pull all of them, but I'll leave this for later. Do you want to get Llama but you don't have enough gems to do so? I think I might have the right solution for you. This video has been sponsored by LD Shop, a website that allows you to buy Genesis crystals for much cheaper than it will cost in-game, so you can hopefully get all the characters you want. Through LD Shop, you'll be able to get discounts that start from 15% off and can get considerably bigger depending on the specific deal. This is, of course, all done legally, and there is no risk of banning game really, something I can testify for myself because I bought from LD Shop before and also other similar means and never had any issues. The website offers a special coupon upon registration to get an additional discount and even a VIP system that gives you a Welkin Moon if you spend over $80. The whole process is also pretty easy and straightforward. You just have to fill out the forms that require your UID and server region, pay through the site, and you will receive the Genesis crystal in-game shortly after. This way, you will be able to get the amazing characters you want, but at a lower price than you would otherwise pay. You'll be able to reach LD Shop and get discounts by clicking on the link in the description below. Regarding Nefer's Kit, the most important thing to talk about is her elemental skill. By using it, she will enter a special stance where the only practical difference is that she can use a special charge attack. This charge attack consumes no stamina, and instead of that, it consumes a Verdant Dew, and it initiates a sequence of 5 attacks that lasts for about 2 seconds. 3 of these attacks deal Lunar Bloom type damage, and as you could expect, they're the biggest source of damage output for her. As a reminder, Verdant Dews can be generated when any character on the team triggers a Bloom reaction with a 2.5 seconds cooldown, so Nefer's archetype is that of a damage dealer that attacks every few seconds through her charge attacks. Secondarily, when you use the skill, if there are 2 non-cry characters on the team, Nefer will also activate a special mechanic of hers that basically freezes all Dendro cores on the field and makes them unable to explode. So Hyper Bloom, Burgeon, and Nilu Bountiful cores, nothing will work, and if in the past few days you heard about Nefer making the normal Dendro Bloom reactions useless, this is basically what it is. Instead of that, Nefer will be able to absorb the Dendro cores herself when using her charge attacks, kinda like Nuvolette does with his balls and his charge attacks, and this will grant her serious buffs. Each core absorbed will increase the majority of her damage by 10% in a way that as of right now seems to be multiplicative and not additive, and if she absorbs 3, she will receive an elemental mastery bonus as well. This is a kit design that makes Nefer a hyper carry of the highest degree, because what she's doing is basically she's depriving the team of the possibility to deal damage through blooms to massively increase her own damage instead, and so it's very selfish of her. The skill stance will land either after 9 seconds or after she uses 3 charge attacks, but the skill itself has 2 charges, like Xiao's skill, Navia's skill, and so on, meaning that you can hypothetically use it 2 times in a row to chain together 6 charge attacks with 2 elemental skill usages. This sequence alone is very powerful and will make her deal damage well above 1 million at free-to-play investment with little effort. The only requirement will be building up a Verdant Dew for every charge attack, which isn't hard or anything, but what it means is that she'll use 6 a rotation. Considering that Llama also needs to consume Verdant Dews to deal damage herself, this finally makes them compete for damage on the team. Nefer definitely isn't beating the selfish allegations here. Moving on, her elemental burst is quite simple. On cast, he will launch a 2-hit attack that deals damage which scales off both attack and elemental mastery. The burst will also receive a multiplicative damage increase based on how many cores Nefer has absorbed with her charge attacks, and on top of that a normal damage bonus as well. However, note that this is normal damage, not lunar bloom damage, and so while its multipliers look high, the total damage it deals doesn't look that impressive even compared to a single charge attack of hers, to the point where it's barely a DPS increase to use the burst at all in her rotations. So overall, Nefer is a very charge attack focused hyper carry, and honestly it's hard to trace similarities with DPSs of the past, because I don't think we've ever had a DPS that makes the rest of the team worse on purpose to make herself better. I find this really interesting about her. There is another side of the coin here, however. The part that makes her freeze blooms on the field is only tied to the presence of a second non-cry character on the team. Hypothetically, if you want to run her on other types of teams, like Hyper Bloom, you can do that as long as you don't use another non-cry character alongside her. Of course, this also comes at the cost of losing a huge portion of her damage, but it's an alternative that's worth considering. Now let's talk about team possibilities more in detail, but first let me remind you that if you enjoy my content but you haven't subbed yet, please consider doing so because it really makes me notice your support. So, the $100 question. How much does Nefer need Llama? The answer is, predictably, a lot. Llama simply increases Nefer's damage massively because she provides many different buffs that all affect Nefer's output, and nobody is really even comparable in this regard. And that's the real issue in my opinion, because Nefer is a hyper carry that wants to be used on traditional Dendro setups, but these setups were never meant to support hyper carries. They were more so meant to incentivize teams with multiple sources of damage, like Quicken, Nail Bloom, and so on. Somebody like Kinage, who is also a Dendro hyper carry, has access to buffers like Bennett and Yansan because he's an attack scaling character. But as an elemental mastery scaling character who doesn't care about the damage bonus because Lunar Bloom doesn't benefit from it, Nefer doesn't exactly have many options to replace Llama on her teams. Even somebody like Nahida, who provides a quite massive elemental mastery buff through her burst, isn't really on the same level. And to be honest, this is a funny situation to me, because in terms of synergy, I don't think Llama and Nefer even synergize that well together because of how they're competing for verdant use to increase their own damage. On pretty much any other team, Llama ends up doing more damage than on Nefer teams because she can actually consume verdant use at will in that scenario. So it's more of a case where Nefer is in a very unexplored niche for Genshin rather than her synergizing with Llama exceptionally well. Another issue with her teams is the sustain slot. Nefer doesn't really have a sustain option that is also really good offensively. Hydro options like Kokomi, Barbara, Sigewinne aren't doing much else rather than applying Hydro. Bennett is not that great either because Nefer's attack scaling is really minimal. Cookie is not doing anything offensively because she can trigger the Hyper Blooms. Inefa probably won't be able to have a great lunar charge uptime. Zhongli is of course just a relatively underpowered character at this point. And that's where Llama's Constellation 1 comes in. This constellation makes Llama heal and it solves the problem for Nefer completely. Honestly, it was obvious it would end like this from the moment they designed the constellation like that. Fucking Oyovers, man. Alternatively, you can go for a half-baked sustain option, like making a character of yours hold prototype Ember, or use Shincho as your Hydra plier, for example. Anyway, the situation is basically that if you go all in on offense, Nefer's team damage output looks really high, kinda close to Skirk teams, which for her first beta version is really good. If you want to compromise and add a reliable sustain option like Zhongli, she still looks strong, but definitely comparatively much weaker. Meanwhile, if you don't have Llama at your disposal, you can go two different routes. First is that you can try pairing her with a non-cry character regardless, like Inefa or Rhino, and second is that you can go a more traditional route of teams like Hyper Bloom without a second non-cry character, so the team is actually allowed to trigger the reaction. However, at the moment, both of these are much weaker compared to her Llama teams and put her below most Natlan compositions. So overall, Nefer, at least numerically, is looking stronger than somebody like Flames, which in a way matters, in another it doesn't, because they just have different matchups in the meta. Practically, they're quite similar, because if you don't have their best support, which I'll remind you, it's a 5-star that came out to the patch before, before, they're not worth pulling, but if you do, they're top tier DPSs. And this is really starting to become a problem, like let's be honest. It would be okay if they did it every once in a while, then wanting you to pull multiple 5 stars in subsequent patches to maximize that team, but this is now the 3rd time in a row. And with the release of Stygian, so a mode that always wants you to use the latest characters because of how the bosses are designed, this makes for a very predatory meta in my opinion. And with this, I'm done for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, also go check LD shop through the links in the description below, and go check the llama guide I made a week ago. Bye bye.